Lauren should be popping up on our screen very soon. There she is. Lauren, hello. It's so exciting.
So happy to
are
be
an
here.
amazing person. People, this is Lauren Lee. She's an amazing person. I keep saying amazing. Lauren, I'm excited to hand it over to you, my lady.
Thank you. You're an amazing person as well, Diana. Thank you for that incredible talk you gave on the Night Scout tutorial. All right, I am going to share my screen with y'all. Hello, everyone. As Diana said, my name is Lauren, and today we are talking about the art of writing technical content. My first career was teaching high school English, and my second was software engineering. And today at Vonage, I get to blend those two roles as a developer educator, which means that my team and I write and film tutorials on how to use our APIs. We build sample applications using our products, and then we create content on how our readers can do so as well. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to make our content engaging and clear, informative, and innovative. We try to stay attuned with what our audience is most curious about learning, and to stay up on tech trends so that our content is relevant, as in it matches the search terms people are Googling, and that it pushes the boundaries of what they're expecting. Meaning we want to surprise our audience with imaginative ways of solving problems with our tech. Ultimately, our goal is to create positive learning experiences for developers on how to use our APIs, for them to walk away from reading a blog post feeling inspired and thinking, wow, I just learned how to build something pretty cool. And today, I'm going to talk about how to channel your inner educator and transform the application and code you've built into informative tutorials for others to learn from. And you might be thinking, Lauren, I'm just a developer. I'm not a writer. I'm bad with words. This talk isn't for me. Or others might be wondering why this topic is even important, or why it was included in a developers conference schedule in the first place. But I promise that anyone here today is capable of writing a technical article. And I hope to encourage all of you to consider doing so after today. We've all got something we're passionate about, and that's a great place to start when it comes to blogging. There are a ton of reasons and benefits to doing so. It can offer you an opportunity to reflect on your personal growth and learning, be a catalyst to receive direct feedback from an audience. It can be a great way to build your own personal brand and become part of a larger conversation. And hey, you might even help other people learn something new, which is kind of a fun and lovely thing to do for the communities that you care about. So technical content itself should be a few things. Instructional. The goal of every tutorial should be stated within the first paragraph, and every following sentence should work towards helping the reader achieve that objective. Non-assuming. Not everyone is going to be an expert in all fields. Common knowledge is not as common as we think, and so nothing should be assumed about the reader's knowledge or coding ability. Timely. Because code changes often, tutorials should be about current things and avoid time-sensitive claims. And when things do inevitably change, your content should be revised so that it remains correct, as in the code in the tutorial runs and as you promise it will at the time of reading. Concise. The writing and language in the tutorial should be simple. It should use non-complex sentence structure and avoid verbose language. Inclusive. Authors should treat their readers with empathy, respect, and use language that makes everyone feel welcome. Now, our developer education team follows a pretty standard flow when writing a blog post. I'm going to walk us through that right now. We start with the why. Why write a tutorial in the first place? Do you want to force yourself to learn something new? This Latin proverb means by teaching we learn, as in, if you're learning something new and want to fully understand it, try teaching it. This will force you to go through the code line by line and explain it, and hopefully you'll come to truly understand it. Do you want to share something that you really love and find handy with the world? Maybe you use something and it helps you, such as Airtable to log your data. Maybe it's Redux and React. If you use something and think others might also benefit from using it too, you might want to share that knowledge. Or do you notice a pattern in your community about people are asking the same sorts of questions quite often? If a particular question is coming up that you know the answer to, maybe you should write a tutorial about it. Now, how to decide what to build. Spend some time thinking about the end goal and target. What do you want to create? Be sure to ask yourself, is this a use case others in your community might be interested in? And there's no reason to do this in a vacuum either. Invite input, whether it's from Twitter or your teammates. Be sure to consider what technologies you want to use. Are they new ones? If you're using this as an opportunity to learn something, such as a language, stack, API, be sure to factor in some research, building, and playtime. Chris Coyer from CodePen put it well. Write about what you want to read. Write about what you're really excited by. I promise passion will help fuel this process. The next thing to think about is the who. Who are you writing this article for? I like to create a persona. I ask myself questions such as, what do they already know? What motivates them? Are they a professional developer or a hobbyist? What are they most curious about? The API you're planning to integrate with, or the tech language you're using? Once you know the answers to questions like that, deciding how to frame your narrative becomes much easier, because you'll most likely present the ideas differently depending on the level of skill of your intended audience. Now it's time to think about the how. How are you going to build the app and write the code? That process needs to be broken up into chunks, and thus I find it helpful to create an initial outline at this stage. Let me clarify though, I do not mean you should write a fully fleshed out tutorial right at this very second. This outline will inevitably change once you start building out the code, but it's good to have. It's a way to get a zoomed out view of what you're going to achieve and ultimately build. It's an opportunity to see if the end goal is too complex or perhaps needs to be simplified. I even recommend sharing this outline with others. Ask them, is this how they too would approach building this app or solve this particular technical problem? Because remember, the way that you choose to solve something may not be how someone else might. And I bet that workshopping your ideas now will help refine your approach. It can be super frustrating to get far along into your tutorial only then to get feedback suggesting that you approach the problem in a different way. And then at that point, you have to refactor the code and rewrite the tutorial. No, thank you. So I promise, early feedback is your friend and something to lean into. Okay, now it's time to build the app itself. As you create your app, practice good GitHub hygiene and push your code often. I think it's helpful to use commit messages as a way to log the steps that you're taking. Taking notes now will prove helpful later on when you're actually writing the tutorial. And some people will choose to record their process beyond their commit messages, such as using a "Today I Learned" journal writing prompt at the end of each day. At the very least, be sure to return back to that outline you previously created and update it if and when you stray from it. I think it's also a good idea to utilize branches and have a branch with the code representing the intended starting point of the tutorial, as well as a branch with the finished code representing the ending point. In this building phase, beware of scope creep. This is hard. When you're building an app, it's easy to get excited about new, shiny things and forget about the tutorial's original objective. Technical writing should be succinct, and thus scope creep can get and create unnecessary work that ultimately produces a less valuable document for your reader. If you feel the scope needs to broaden, return to your goal. Evaluate if that content is genuinely crucial. Then choose to cut it, or if necessary, consider a series. Lastly, when you think you're done building out the app, it's time to optimize the code. Revise, clean it up. The repo shouldn't have extras or cluttered bits of code that aren't imperative to the goal of the tutorial. And now, to turn on your educator's brain and begin writing. Do this quickly while it's still fresh in your head. At this moment in time, you can remember what it was like before you understood it. You also understand what it takes to go from not knowing to knowing it. And that's the journey you need to take your readers on. At this stage, don't worry about things like grammar, or spelling, or formatting, just write. Let's talk about the key pieces of every tutorial. The introduction and overview. This is the moment to capture the reader's interest and to do so as soon as possible. As an English teacher, I used to tell my students to hook their readers. You're going to do that when you tell them the goal of the article, not with some long-winded story or overgeneralization. State the goal quickly. I should not be 700 words into an article and still not know what we're going to achieve in it. Other things to include in your intro outside of the goal statement, maybe a description of the flow of the app, perhaps a diagram showing what and how you'll achieve it, as well as a clarification of who the article is for, or rather, who your intended audience is. Next comes the prereq section. What assumptions are you making? What locally needs to be installed already before someone can follow along? This is your moment to ask your reader to sign up for any necessary accounts, maybe mention what version of code language you're using and what IDE or text editor you suggest that they use. Okay, now onto the meat and potatoes of your tutorial, the steps. This is when you get to answer the big questions of why. Why did you write the code the way that you did? In this section, you must provide readers with all the explanations that they need to understand the tutorial. The goal is for the reader to learn the concepts, not just copy and paste the code. So give details. Take time to explain why you made the choices that you did. Don't feel nervous about providing too much or being redundant right now. It's important to provide this insight for those who are beginners or are new to the concepts in your article. I promise that those who are more senior have learned the art of speed reading the docs. They'll not be bothered to jump ahead to the next section of code, but the readers who will benefit from that extra explanation will be incredibly grateful for it. So this means that there should never be what I call a lonely function. Anytime you provide a bit of code, get in the habit of explaining what it does. This doesn't mean that you should walk the reader through all of the code. Your GitHub repo is where the application lives. So instead, you should spend your time highlighting and explaining the interesting and relevant parts of the code base. Help your reader predict what issues they might encounter. You've just built this app yourself. Share with them the possible confusions or pain points they might encounter. Have someone who doesn't normally write in your language review your code and maybe look at the outline. Ask them to follow the steps. Where did they get stuck? What questions did they have? Those answers should be added to your tutorial in this section. An important thing to note here is that order matters. Start with the product or feature that you care most to highlight, because inevitably, not all readers are going to make it to the end of your article. A quick note on things beyond the actual instructions of the tutorial. It's important to break up both long sections of code and words into consumable chunks. The general rule of thumb is that if the text or code can't fit within the view height of your screen, it needs to be broken up. We do this for two reasons. One, to make things less intimidating. Two, to appear as visually appealing as possible. So if you notice that you have a wall of text, code somewhere, the best way to break it up is with subheadings or lists, images, illustrations, screenshots, or diagrams. There's a lot of types of images that you can include. Maybe a diagram that shows the flow of how the application itself is going to work. Give the reader an overview of the technical functionality of the app. This can be a fun way to give them that broader, zoomed out look of the steps before diving into the nitty-gritty of the tutorial. Sometimes it's a good idea to include a GIF or a video explaining how exactly to do something. Or you could include a screenshot of your file directory after explaining how you organized your project. My team also likes to include images of what the finished app will look like at the beginning and the end of the tutorial. So to give a preview of what your readers should expect to see on their local machine as they follow along. For accessibility purposes, anytime that you add media, be sure to include alt tags and explain with text whatever is happening in an image or video. Images and screenshots are great. Most readers, though, will want to be able to copy and paste code snippets. So if you ever have an image of some code, be sure to explicitly type it out beneath the picture when you explain what it does. Remember, you should only be exploring the relevant bits of code. So that means you should keep the boilerplate to a minimum, unless of course it's a tutorial on how to write boilerplate code. And don't reinvent the wheel. Consider linking out to other tutorials that explain concepts or things that you're referencing and don't connect immediately back to the goal of your tutorial. And finally, the conclusion. Congrats, you made it to the end. You've explained all the steps necessary to achieve the tutorial's goal. This may feel repetitive, but you can never predict what order someone's reading it or what they're skipping. So say it again. To paraphrase the master Aristotle himself, the articles will flow. Tell him what you're going to tell him. Tell him what you told him. The repetitive cadence helps your message sink in and bring concepts full circle. Other things to include in the conclusion is encouragement towards further reading and other related content. Is there a video version of content for those with different learning styles? Be sure to link it here. Then consider adding maybe a call to action and direct them to a community to engagement. For example, my team often invites readers to find us on Twitter and to join our community Slack, which you should do, by the way. Okay, now on to our final step. Once you've written the tutorial, you get to revise it. Let's allocate a lot of time for this. This is time to invite feedback, to play with the code, to go line by line through your instructions. You revise it, but also invite others to do so as well. I like to get one person to review the code to ensure that the app actually runs by the end and that I didn't skip, explaining any necessary steps. And then I also invite another person to review the words of the piece. Do the sentences and sections flow together? Could I rearrange the steps to make more intuitive sense to the reader? Does the narrative I'm trying to convey make sense and wrap up by the end? If you don't have anyone in your world available or around to help you edit, at the very least, run it through the free online grammar and spelling tool, Grammarly, because there's nothing professional about spelling mistakes or poor grammar. This part of the process cannot be rushed. I know you may feel impatient to get it out there and to be done with it, but I promise spending time in the world of revision will pay off. And finally, once you've done all this, you've gotten feedback, you've revised the draft multiple times, and you're feeling both happy and proud of what you've written, hit that publish button. And there are lots of places to do just that. Maybe it's on your own personal website or a WordPress blog, but there are also a lot of free platforms that allow you to get published immediately with very little formatting required, such as Dev.to and Medium. And once it's live, you've got to share it loudly with the world. This is 100% a crucial part of this process, because it doesn't matter if you write something brilliant if no one ever reads it. Schedule tweets to go out about it using Buffer. Ask the content channel on your different Slacks and Discord groups to give it a bump or retweet. Submit it to relevant newsletters. Cross-post it to places like Facebook, Reddit, Hacker News, LinkedIn. Different types of audiences exist in those different types of sites. So at the beginning, post it everywhere and then let data help train your model for the future. Study those Google Analytics and see where your post got most attention and click-through rates. Soon, you'll be able to explicitly target those most likely to learn something from your future tutorial with those metrics. Actually, now's a good time to celebrate because you just wrote a piece of technical content. And as we said before, this can be a huge thing for your career and is certainly something to feel proud of completing. Before I wrap up today, let's touch briefly on tone of voice. I think it's a good goal to try and sound like a friend, not a textbook. Strive for a conversational tone, as if you were teaching a workshop. It's okay to speak directly to the reader, to use we or you or both, but try to be consistent with those and not flip-flop back and forth between them. As in, it's okay to say something like, today we're going to learn about Flask. Open up your terminal to begin. Don't write something like, let's save our credentials in your root directory, because that could get quickly confusing. A friendly but formal also means that you avoid using jargon and technical terminology or three-letter acronyms. Consider avoiding memes, as references to pop culture fade quickly and can be markers of an outdated post. And avoid excess jokes. Essentially, be cautious with your humor. It's fun to be funny, but it doesn't always translate across language and cultures. Plus, it can make people feel excluded really easily and quickly. I'd say the goal is to try to write for a global audience and aim for a tone that works across language and cultural boundaries. A note on style. Keep your language direct, efficient, active. Readers don't want excess text when they're trying to read dozens of steps. Instead of writing, be sure your application key has been entered in the following line if you know what's good for you, maybe rephrase that to say, on a new line, enter your application key. It's much better. Your tutorial should be comprehensive and written for all experience levels. The goal is to be as clear and detailed as possible without making assumptions about the reader's background knowledge. So that means explicitly including every command a reader needs to go from their first dependency installation to deployment. It's impossible to assume what the reader already knows. To achieve the goal you establish at the beginning of an article, your reader should not require any outside steps or knowledge. I think it's also important to try and avoid oversimplification words such as simple, straightforward, easy, simply, obviously, we all know, it's commonly accepted, and just. Well, authors often use these words to encourage and motivate readers to push through those challenging topics. They tend to have the opposite effect. A reader who hears that something is easy may feel frustrated when they don't understand something or are encountering an issue. A reader who hears, instead, encourage your reader by providing the explanations they need to succeed. And a pro tip, run a quick Command F on all those words before publishing. Consider deleting them. I promise your audience will appreciate it. Beyond making assumptions about the level of learning, your language should be inclusive. Sometimes unknowingly, the words we use can make people feel marginalized because of their gender, culture, race, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, and more. Our intention is to treat our community with empathy, respect, and make everyone feel welcome with our words. Exclusionary words such as guys, dudes, ladies, girls can be replaced with folks, team, everyone. And assuming the reader is a male and giving him directions is a bad call. Words like crazy, insane, or mad can be replaced with better suited ones such as outrageous, out of the box, and innovative. There are a plethora of resources online. I encourage you to read more if this topic is new to you. Ultimately, my final bits of advice are to keep it short, invite feedback, don't assume knowledge, and explore the why. Don't just tell your reader what to do. Explain your rationale and decision-making. Invite your reader to do some similar critical thinking. Writing is hard. The only way to get better is through practice. So don't let your stuff sit in your drafts for too long. Try not to be hard on yourself. You may be feeling as though you're not the right person to write about this topic, but you might help one person by publishing your post, and that makes it worth it. And if this talk has helped lift the veil on the writing process, even a little bit for you, allow me to encourage you to write for us. Vonage has a program called Developer Spotlight in which we invite external developers to write tutorials on unique use cases. If you've got an idea for building an innovative app that includes our APIs, we would love to share that idea and tutorial with our readers. We pay $500 per post to you or a charity, so please do apply. Thank you for listening. My name is Lauren. If you've ever liked to talk more about all things writing and content and in between, I go live on Twitch every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Vonage Devs channel. And come join in on the fun as I learn from my colleagues about neat things we can do and build with our APIs. Thank you again. Have a lovely day. Happy Vonage Developer Day, everyone. I think I'm done. Stop sharing.
Wow. This is, wow. Wow, Lauren. Thank you so much for your amazing talk.
Of course.
We've got some questions, and I can see the general chat. People are so chuffed about this. Thank you so much again for your awesome talk. So we've got some questions, and the first one is, where is the best place to publish content? Dev2, Medium, my own blog?
Your own blog, honestly, then it's yours. But that shouldn't be a blocker to get you started. You can always go back and grab the content that you publish on Dev2 and then post it to your own eventually later. So don't let that be a blocker if you're feeling nervous about maintaining a blog on top of your job and something else. But having it on your own place and ability to drive the analytics, that's ultimately the best place. Or Developer Spotlight wasn't listed in there, but I would say that's probably the best place to write.
Thank you.
Ooh, I just became a sales girl. Sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. I admire your enthusiasm. It's infectious. It's
I do love Developer Spotlight program. Please come write for us. It is my joy in life to say yes to proposal topic ideas. So please send them our way.
Definitely. So we have more questions. The next question is, how do you decide on the technical flow of an article? Should you focus more on the right way or the way that helps people win quicker?
Oh, well, it depends on what your audience then is. If you're choosing to write a hacky, like, hey, this is a quick way that I do this, and that's the tutorial, go that route. If you want, there's another option there too. Like, you can, of course, write this is how to do it by the book standard, but it's also a really interesting article to share your opinion, because that's what's going to make you unique and differentiate you on the web. Docs exist to share with you the steps of getting started with stuff. If you can throw yourself in there and add a little pizzazz to it, and that's an opinionated piece, I think that's going to do better on Twitter, on blogs, and people are that's going to start a conversation, and I think it's fun to be controversial. So I vote for showing off a little bit and showing how you do something uniquely, and then that helps build up attention to, wow, this wacky developer, she sure is cool. I'm interested, and I want to have a conversation about why she made those choices.
Wow, that's grand. Lauren, do you have a list of tools you personally use in your technical writing process?
I do. I'm so glad you asked. Well, let's see. We as a team use Grammarly. I mentioned that. We often we use GitHub. We'll post our tutorial and then allow for comments within a pull request. And so that's a nice place to track the full conversation and journey. If you write something in Google Docs, you could lose comments. They could be resolved and marked away, and then you kind of lose the history of it then. So GitHub is really great for us to house the journey of the content, if you will. I think tool-wise, and I know my team is on the chat, so feel free to weigh in on what else we're using. But
yeah, well, we have more questions.
Sure.
And I know we have enough time for a few more questions, and I'm loving the excitement that your talk generated, and all these questions are so good. So if you don't mind, I will keep firing them.
I think I was early on my talk, so yeah, let's.
No, it was perfect. This actually happened to give room to these amazing questions.
Great.
Another question is, I'm so excited. How long should my tutorials be?
Ooh, that is a great question, and I actually did not talk about that in my talk, so thank you for, which was a little purposeful because this is a hot topic and there's truly no right answer. There is benefit in having a quick tip that is a short article that gives a quick use case of an API. There's also a middle world of around 2,000 to 3,000 words, and that does well too because that takes me on a journey. But those hefty tutorials that are in that world of 10,000 words perform pretty well. So it depends on what your ultimate goal is. If you're going to take me on a journey that can stand alone, that then should not be split out into a series. But for example, let's use an article you've written for us, right? It was a series because both subjects, yes, they fit together, but existed also on their own. This is a long way to say that there is no right answer, and you get to get creative with this. And data's your friend on this. So for you, if you're out there wanting to get started, write something short and then write something long, and use your data analytics to decide what works best for your particular audience. Yeah.
Wow, this is cool. We have more questions.
Cool.
Another question says, have you written about this? I would love to read this in a tutorial, and thanks for the awesome talk.
Vonage Dev will have a tutorial very soon on our blog.
That's amazing. Another awesome question. Well, these questions have been amazing. Why did you decide?
Definitely.
Yeah. So this one says, why did you decide on written content over videos?
Great question. Because my passion right now is video, and I spend a lot of time in the Twitch and YouTube world. I think all of this applies to video. I've been learning the process of creating a recorded video or crafting the narrative of what a Twitch stream is going to be, and all of these tips apply exactly to video as well. Coming up with the outline, deciding what the goal is, ultimately the way that you're going to film a video or a tutorial is going to be the same exact way. I think you build out the code first, film that, then write out your tutorial, the words of it, film the audio of that, and then splice them together. Don't try to do the audio and the recording of the screen share at the same moment. It'll be problematic in the future when you have to go and modularize or update parts of the code. Maybe your company's going through a rebrand, and you need new screenshots of the developer portal. It'll be a lot easier if you do those two things in separate as opposed to tandem. And yeah, I think ultimately these tips and tricks apply to both.
Wow. Okay. We have more questions, Lauren. This is so exciting, and I'm loving this. I'm learning so much already. Someone asks, how do I get over feeling underqualified to write technical content?
Oh, my old friend imposter syndrome. This is a long conversation. I would love to continue this afterwards, but ultimately you have to look it straight in the head and combat it, right? Because no one is ever going to be the most expert on anything. And the way to become one is to start writing about it. Explain it to someone. Put it in written form, share it. Maybe no one will read it. That's okay. Eventually, you'll start writing more and people will start that conversation. It's just, I totally empathize with this question because I've been there too. And there's no way to do it other than just to get started. And write on something that you're passionate about. Return to the topic in which that you feel most curious to learn about. We in DevRel have a term that we call conference-driven development. We submit a tutorial or a talk because we want to learn about the topic that we're going to speak about. And so then maybe declare to the world you could do it. This is what would be called tutorial-driven development. declare that you're going to write a tutorial. Then you have to learn it, become the expert, and then write about that journey that you took it on. So I think you just got to rip the Band-Aid off, which is much easier said than done.
I like it. I like it. And I actually feel very much supported as part of the team. You have been an inspiration to me personally as well. We have a few more questions. Lauren, I know people are really engaged. This has been exciting, and I'm loving the questions. And this one is particularly something I'd like to know personally. How do you deal with negative feedback on posts?
Should
an
we be
interesting
PG?
question.
We shall. Yeah, trolls are real, and I empathize with the person that is asking this question, because hate online is a real thing, and I think surround yourself with a community, hopefully, that is going to be supportive. And when I've written tutorials or online and have gotten negative feedback, I feel really blue about it at first, right? That's a bummer to receive negative commentary, especially when you're just trying to share something with the world that you're excited about. Allyship is a really cool thing. So me not being the person to respond to the haters or the trolls feels really empowering. To see my friends in the tech community saying, hey there, that wasn't super nice. Maybe you should consider your language. Like, here's a code of conduct, or here's why you're wrong. That feels really good. So I think being participatory in a community is ultimately the good thing here. And so, there's really ultimately no answer that's the best here, right? It stinks that people sometimes aren't super kind online, and I think we can just be models in the community and demonstrate kindness in what we do every day.
I agree. Lauren, I will ask one more question. I know it's been quite the experience. I really appreciate you answering all of our questions. Your talk was definitely inspiring. I appreciate you a lot. This is again part of that circle of love, I would say, and appreciation for our team. Any tools you recommend to identify relevant keywords before writing the article?
Oh yes, search engine optimization is a real important thing to be thinking about, and that plays a game even with titling, and the art of writing a good title is important and matters as well. And so Google has great analytics that you can research what people are paying attention to right now in the particular topic that you're writing about or trying to enter the space of. And so, yeah, you can definitely use that online and try to have the first paragraph of your tutorial needs to have those buzzwords in it. It may feel a little sales pitchy to do that, but it's important to make sure that for search engine optimization reasons, make sure that that is right at the beginning, is set that goal early with the tech that you're using and the use case so that those can match with what people are searching for. So that's really definitely just something to be thinking about. And then subheaders also to break up your article and use that for a moment to highlight important words that people are searching for as well. Google Analytics is definitely going to be your friend as you begin publishing more and more. And again, once you get something out there, you can use that as something to compare against, and then grow your understanding of who your audience is and what people are clicking then to afterwards. And I think it's really interesting to know who you're writing for and to pick who you care most to communicate with. And, you know, I care deeply about folks that are entering tech and are in the beginning stages of their journey. And so how can we create a safe and comfortable learning environment for them to be learning this new API that we're talking about? And so making sure that language is very specific and targeted to them matters to me.
Wow. Lauren, thank you so much. This was
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for answering all the questions. So
Absolutely.
people, it's